So you had some follow-up thoughts on our last discussion about how we can have a good God in a world full of suffering at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess the main thing that I thought about after we finished was that um, how you grapple with these things really does depend on what you believe about God, because um, every religion in one form or other tries to um, explain in some way, this universal experience of people not, you know, not viewing, not believing the universe is as it ought to be,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of the one thing they all have in common. And
That's a good point to repeat that every belief system in some way acknowledges the universe as it exists is not as it should be.
yeah, and there's radically different explanations as to why and how to deal with that. And um, the Christian faith is really the only faith that believes in the incarnation, the way that um, the New Testament describes it, that God became a human being. And to me, that just changes the whole conversation, because um, if you believe that God is just completely separate and detached from his creation, which some belief systems do believe that God is wholly other, completely independent from us, and um, it kind of portrays God as being aloof, being um, inaccessible, and um, like when you're actually experiencing suffering, it's hard to know how to cry out to God if you view God as being aloof and detached and kind of in an ivory tower per se, But if you believe that God Himself has suffered, and not only suffered but suffered infinitely more than any of us will ever suffer, um, that doesn't necessarily answer all your questions, but it just changes the conversation, um, and it gives a whole different meaning to suffering, because um, if you believe that Jesus is God's Son and He experienced what the Scripture says He experienced, I mean, when you suffer, you can relate to Jesus in a way that you can't otherwise. There's a camaraderie that's built up between you and Jesus. And again, it's not an intellectual thing where all your answers arrive, but it's just it's this degree of comfort that it's hard to explain exactly. But
I completely agree. I had a trip to the ER when I was in my early 20s, and I got picked up by an ambulance and taken to St. Dominic, and I was just like writhing in pain. I just felt terrible. And I look over on the wall of my tiny little emergency room, spot they put me in, and there's a crucifix, Jesus on the cross, and it might seem gimmicky, but in that moment, I can't really put it into words, but it was just extraordinarily comforting to know that he was suffering too. He knows what it's like. Like, I'm not alone in my suffering.
mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, it didn't end my suffering in that moment, but
Yeah.
there's something about having Him with you that is life-giving.
Yeah. And the other thing that came to mind that we didn't talk about last time was just how, as tempting as it is um, to become an unbeliever, in the face of suffering, um, it doesn't really fix anything. Like if you do opt to just stop believing in God, you're going to wake up tomorrow morning, the world's still going to be just as messed up as it was today. It doesn't really fix anything. So I think that's an important point to make, because some people, the common allegation, that religion is a crutch, and sure, for some people it is, but religion doesn't make life easy, and um, getting rid of religion doesn't make life easy. Life's gonna be hard no matter what you believe, and I think if you are using religion as a crutch, then suffering will probably drive you away. But if you understand that Jesus calls us to follow him, not because of the goodies he's going to give us tomorrow, but just because he's good, um, and he's good no matter what's happening in the world. You won't bail out on him, But if I think about the Chronicles of Narnia, when Peter and Edmund and Susan and Lucy had to fight against the White Witch, they had no assurance they were going to survive the battle. They had no assurance which side was going to win the battle. But the idea of defecting to the White Witch was unimaginable. I mean, they were going to follow Aslan, not because health and wealth was guaranteed, but just because he was good, And following the White Witch wasn't an option,
Yeah. And spoiler alert, but I mean, in the end, they don't survive, but they're caught up into the remaking of that whole world.
Yeah.
And have, it makes every sorrow and struggle look very small in comparison to the glory that lied ahead for them.
It's a good book.
It is. I guess the first is Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, and the last is The Last Battle, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you... Magician's Nephew is kind of a prequel to Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but yeah, Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was published first.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then the only other thing I thought was that, not to take the conversation into like academic of a direction, but kind of on the same thought about becoming an unbeliever not solving anything. I think in some ways it actually creates more problems because, like we talked about last time, the Bible takes for granted the world is full of pain and suffering, and it gives us permission to talk about that and grapple with that. If you just embrace like a full out, secular humanist atheist worldview, you don't really have an objective ground for saying the world is quote unquote bad. You can say you don't like it, but if there's no absolute standard of to call something good means it conforms to some standard that is good,
Mm-hmm.
And if there is no standard, if all that's purely subjective, and then when you're experiencing pain and suffering, the most you can say is that you don't like it. You can't say this is actually evil. So if you embrace atheism because of the pain you're experiencing, you kind of undermine your own ability to fully oppose the pain you're experiencing. I mean, not to say it's not tempting, it is, but it doesn't help.
And please don't hear us being critical of people struggling with those things. Daniel and I have both suffered and, been close to just saying, oh, I can't do this anymore, and this isn't theoretical for us, I guess is what I'm saying. We're not, this isn't just something we've thought about as hypothetical. We've lived it, and it sucks, but it's and those who have given up belief, again, there's no criticism here. We're just kind of discussing these ideas, and our hearts go out to anyone who has not known what else to do because of the deep pain they've experienced. I guess what we're doing here is to say that deep pain doesn't have to be a reason to cease believing. In fact, deep pain can be a means to feel more connected to the man Jesus, who is prophesied to be the man of sorrows, who bore our grief and pain. I think that's one of the things I like the most about Christianity is it's just utterly realistic. It doesn't shy away, as you say, from
Yeah.
just the world as it is, just raw and ruthless, um, and it insists that there's a benevolent creator who's also Father and who constantly wills our good and will set everything right again. Like that's just, it's amazing,
Yeah.
you know. And but hard to see and feel when we're in the depths of despair, for sure. But know that God is in the depths of despair with you. Our pain reverberates in his heart. I think honestly, I think it's safe, it's biblical to say that God grieves as long as there's anyone in grief. You know, God grieves as long as there's anything that's not set right.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. That's good.
Next time we're going to do some quotes and a song. Daniel is a fantastic musician and songwriter, and yeah, it'll be fun. Well, as much as talking about suffering can be fun. Anyway, thanks guys. Bless you.